Okay, hello Pixel Pushers, Siddiq here again with another Affinity Photo tutorial. Now this time we're going to look at adjustment layers. Now there's two different ways. First of all, what is an adjustment layer? Effectively, you've got your image here. This is a raw image that's been processed already, so it's obviously ready. It's in the photo persona at the top, ready for your general editing. So I've already enhanced the contrast a little bit and boosted the colors just a little bit because it was a raw file. But other than that, assume this is an image straight out your camera and you want to apply different adjustments to it, whether it's creating a black and white image, whether it's changing the white balance, or whether it's changing some values of the colors. We've got some rich warm colors here in the leaf litter on the floor. Of course, you've got your greens, you've got a little bit of blue in the sky as well. So we'll look at all those three in three simple steps. Okay, so let's start with where are the adjustment layers? Where do you find them? What is an adjustment layer? So this is your image. We apply a new layer on top of it, which is the adjustment, and it's what we call a non-destructive edit, because that layer you can still go back in and fine tune it. But I'll show you that as we go through. How do you find it? Where do you find it from? You can either go up into the layer and new adjustment layer, and of course they're all there, and you can do it through menu if you're more familiar to that, or you can go down to here. When you're in the layers palette here, you can go down to here, this circle with a line through it, and you've got the same adjustment layers there. Okay, so we can do from, and this is in fact where I'm going to go to here. Or you can go to the adjustment panel and they're all there as well. Okay, so they're all there as well. Now there's a different reason for using them in here, which we'll explore in another video, but you can do it from here. So let's go to layer, go to adjustment, and we'll just use a simple black and white one, okay, which is something that most people will do, and you will have seen it in previous videos as well. So this allows you to, there's the black and white adjustment layer, or black and white conversion layer. It's already been created, and it applies that adjustment wholesale to the whole image, to the image below, to the base background image below. And of course this adjustment layer panel, a pop-up box, allows you to control each color value differently in that black and white conversion. You can see the leaf litter has got a lot of red in it, so by moving this slider you can either reduce the effect or increase that contrast effect. And there'll be a lot of yellow there as well, of course, so we might want to bring that up just to make it a bit more vibrant in this area. And then the greens, of course, there's lots of greens there. If you want to dull those greens down or brighten them up, you can do that. Let's just dull them down a little bit. And then the cyan has a little bit of effect just around here in this particular image. And then the blues, of course, are up in the sky. So if you want to dull down the blues, you can, or if you want to increase their values, you can do that. And I don't think the magenta will have much effect because there's not much in there. And we'll make those adjustments and then just click the X just to come out of that. If you double click the adjustment layer that you've just made, if you've finished it or if you're in the middle of it and you want to fine tune it again, you can just double click the adjustment square there, not on that part, because that allows you to change the name of that layer, which of course you may want to do, but this, and then that allows you to fine tune it again. Okay, so once you've done that, the other thing, of course, about the adjustment layers is that not only are they non-destructive, but the key thing here is that if you notice, the adjustment layer is a matte. Okay, so if you've followed some of my other videos or guides, you'll know that the way I remember how a matte works is that black blocks and white reveals. So what does that mean? That's white, so it means it reveals or applies the effect that that layer is designed to do, which in this case is make this image black and white. So white reveals the effect of black and white. But if I paint on this adjustment layer with a black brush, with black paint, it will block the effect. And if it blocks the black and white effect, you guessed it, it will reveal the color underneath. So let's demonstrate that. So make sure that layer is selected. We go to the brush tool here on the left hand side. Obviously have the right size of brush and right type of brush. Go to the brushes palette at the top here. Let's just find a nice soft brush like that and change the size of it again. You can experiment with what brush you want, and you can see straight away with the brush preview, you can see that if I paint now here and make sure that I am painting with black, which I will be, but if I click on the color palette, that top swatch should say black. It can be white, so just double check it says black, because if it says black, then it means you're painting with black. And the key and the thing to remember is that if you see through the brush preview the color underneath, you know that you're going to be painting with black even before you paint it, because black blocks. So if I now paint that with this particular brush, and what it's doing, if you notice up here on the mat, is that it's painting black onto it, and wherever it's painting black, it is revealing the color underneath. There's the color is underneath, that layer is on top of that layer. So it's and clearly what you'd want to do, you'd zoom in and make sure that you're doing it carefully, but just as a quick demonstration, let's just do it fairly quickly. And of course you can change the opacity of the brush here as well. You might not want it full opacity, or change the flow and the hardness. That's all something you can experiment with. Whichever tool that you're using, make sure that you look at the options at the top to fine tune how that tool behaves. Okay, so let's just and we don't want to do the tree. Okay, so just the leaf litter, and that's pretty much okay. And that's purely by painting black with the paintbrush onto that adjustment layer. So you're blocking the effect. Black blocks the effect of black and white. Whatever the adjustment layer, black will block that adjustment. If it was a blur, it would block that, and we can look at that in a future video. But that's a quick example and a stark example of how black and white conversion through an adjustment layer, not only is it non-destructive, but it also allows you to fine-tune where that effect is applicable, rather than it being for over the whole image. Okay, and once you're happy with that, of course, if that's the end result, you don't want to do anything else, you just go to File and Export. Same as before, make sure it's the file type that you want, and the properties and parameters and the file size, what it will be, and then click Export, and obviously select the name and where you want to export it to, which folder. Okay, that's the first one, and we'll come on to the second one in a moment. Of this adjustment layer tutorial is if we just rewind this one back to where we were to start with, this particular image, and we want to apply an adjustment layer, and the one that's pretty exciting is the HSL. But let's just quickly look at the white balance one. So white balance adjustment layer, this is fairly straightforward. Same as at the top, you've got a new adjustment layer up here, same with the option to matte out or to block out the effect in certain parts. And of course it's just two simple sliders that you can make it cooler, warmer. Let's make it a bit warmer, and then you can even change the tint if you want to. Let's just have it about there, and then we just click OK. Again, if you wanted to make sure, using the brush tool, color black, that you want to make the adjustment only applicable in certain areas, you could paint out the effect essentially, or block out the effect. Remember, black blocks, painting with black, and it's very subtle in this case because it's not a black and white conversion, it's actually a change of white balance. Okay, but you can see that I've painted black on where the tree is. So that's the way the image was, and that's the way it is with the adjustment layer. So it's a subtle change, but this principle is exactly the same. That's the point that I want to get across. This principle is the same. Okay, let's just reel that back again. Using that history palette, just moving that slider back is great to just get back to the starting point. Okay, so the last one for this particular tutorial is the HSL, Hue, Saturation and Luminosity. Okay, so this one is a very powerful one, and I think very creative one. Now, just something to get across. What are we doing? We're changing pixel values, the color values of the pixels and the brightness values of the pixels. Okay, now this is the complete color wheel. These are the broad color values. The circle is around, the white circle is around all the colors, but if I so it's the whole wheel that's would be affected. So if I change the hue now, it changes the hue across the whole image. If that's what you want to do, fine. And incidentally, if you double click the slider, it always goes back to its starting point. But let's say I want to only change the warm values, the red values down here. So if I click on red initially, that basically narrows down the color wheel down to the red area of the spectrum. But if I want to fine tune that even further, if I zoom in and say it's this sort of red here that I'm looking for, click on the picker and go down and pick that color, and notice when I click there, notice what happens to those the selection point. It just subtly moves. Well, in that case it wasn't quite so subtle. It moved across more towards the yellow end of the spectrum. So I fine-tuned that I'm only going to be affecting the color values in the leaf litter. Okay, so if I now change the hue, it only affects the colors that I've selected. So make it more red. It does obviously affect the same value in the rest of the image, and that's where, if you wanted to be a bit more precise, you can actually move these and say, well, I don't want it to affect the yellow because there's more yellow there. I want it to affect more in the red spectrum. So you can move these round. And so now when I move the hue, it affects more the leaf litter down here than it does up here. Okay, so you can do that. And again, but if you don't want that red color to change here, remember what you can do is making sure that is selected, select the brush tool, make sure the color's black, the appropriate brush that you've got, again just choose an appropriate brush, change the size of it, and then paint black onto here. You're blocking that effect of the change of hue that we did there. Okay, so it actually takes that value out of that tree trunk, which is where it was visible. So now the value, if you wanted to take it out there, maybe just paint there, and then that value, the change of the hue into the bright red, is only visible here and not anywhere else, because by blocking out the effect, black blocks, it means that underneath you're seeing the color values of the tree in this scene before you apply the hue and saturation filter. Okay, now if you double click the hue and saturation filter, if you wanted to, let's say, change the hue of the blue in the sky, for example, let's just go right the way in and say broadly select the blue, so the blue part of the spectrum, we can see that. You can narrow it down yourself, or use the picker to actually pick a color value, let's say that blue, and now when I change the hue, it will only change the blues. You can make the blue purple, the sky purple, or make it into a totally different color, or indeed you could desaturate it so there's no blue in there at all, or increase the saturation, of course, if you wanted to change the luminosity of it, how bright it is, if I just zoom in there, by changing the luminosity of it, you can make it brighter or less so, and the hue, you might want the blue to be more prominent, and that way you are able to control the colours in a given part of a scene without having to select it. This HSL adjustment layer basically allows you to select by colour. Okay, and you can make those adjustments on top of each other all the way through. Okay, so that's without the adjustment, and that's with, and the blue's darker, blue's a bit more vibrant, and the of course the leaf litter is a total different shade of a warm red colour as opposed to the original brown. Okay, so that's the general principle of that. So it's down into the adjustment layers, choose which one you want, and then you've got that adjustment layer. Not only can you fine tune it by double clicking on it, but you can block the effect by using a brush with a black paint on it, and then wherever you apply that, it then blocks that effect for your image below before, of course, you go to File and Export or Save as a Affinity Photo file, the native format, so you can come back to all the layers and all the adjustments as you wish afterwards. Okay, give it a go. Again, give it a like if you found it useful, and any comments or feedback would be greatly appreciated. And of course, if you've got a different or a better or improved way of doing a similar thing, do share it with everybody, including myself. Thank you very much.